Hello again, everyone. Today I am here to swatch these Matisse brand acrylics, and these are what you would call a heavy body acrylic, and they are somewhat matte compared to a lot of other acrylic brands. And this is a brand from Australia, and I have a couple of other colors from this brand, and I really like them. The one I really like is Ash Rose, I think is the color. I use it all the time. It's like one of my favorite pinks. So there was a sale on these at Jerry's Artarama. There was sort of the year-end, New Year sale. So I decided to pick up some colors that are kind of, well, I don't know if they're unique to the Matisse brand, but they're definitely interesting, like burnt sienna. That's a pretty typical color, but some of these I wanted to try out in my mixed media work. So I don't swatch a lot of acrylics on the channel, but I thought since I did have quite a range of this particular brand, and it's sort of a different brand that I haven't seen swatched a lot, that I would go ahead and swatch these for you. So I'm going to put them off to the side in, let's see, let's go from green or cool to warm colors here. And they have sort of an interesting, put those over there. They do come sealed. So it's completely sealed here on the inside. So what I did was I got this Princeton Neptune brush with a little pointy end here. This is actually a watercolor brush. Well, you could use it for acrylics, but this is a brush that I use for watercolors. I actually have a separate craft acrylic brush that I'm going to be using for swatching these, but there's no sharp pointy end on this, but the sharp pointy end, you can use it, you know, while you're actually doing work and like scratching into paint, or hopefully this will work, you can use it to open things like this. So yeah, that did work there. And then we've got a little bit, so I do have a paper towel off to the side to wipe this off, but in the meantime I am going to put a little bit there. And what's nice about having the seal on there is if you don't plan to use them for a while when you get them, for example, you could let them store for quite a while like that, but the cap hopefully seals pretty well. So let me go ahead and swatch this one out here. I'm going to put just a little bit of water on that acrylic brush. And this one is a little bit more, it's a little bit more transparent than some of the other colors. The paper that I'm working on here is a watercolor paper. It's Pentalic. It's a Pentalic field book. So I'm trying to get this swatch fairly smooth, but you could also, I mean, you could do some impasto, which I'll actually try to do. Impasto just means like it's sort of layered on top, because this is a thicker acrylic. And because I do have extra, I'm going to put that on another piece of paper. Okay, I found some mixed media paper, which I am going to put the excess paint on. I like to do this with acrylics, especially because if you have a lot of acrylic on your brush and then you rinse it off in your water's going to have a lot of acrylic solids in it, and that can, one, clog up your pipes in your house, and it's not very environmentally friendly to dispose of acrylic solids. And so I try to keep my water as clean as possible, or, you know, as free of solids as possible from the acrylics. And this way I can also use up all of my paint and try to be a little bit more environmentally friendly at the same time. So let's go ahead. I mean, if you, there's a lot of theories on the best way to dispose of acrylic paints. And I would say look those up. I recommend doing it the best way that works for you and is best for the environment, but I found that this allows me to use all of the paint and to have less impact on my house's pipes and the environment. Okay, so this next one is Aqua Green Light. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Push into that. I kind of twist it a little bit so that we can get that flowing. Try and put as much of that back as I can. And then I'm going to put that there. And the spout or whatever you want to call it on these is, so it's really sealed, but it's a small little spout there in the top, and then the cap snaps shut. Okay, let's put that there. And for things like this, I'm wiping it off on a tissue because that's what I had handy, but these I just throw in the trash. Okay, so let's go ahead and spread that one out. This one is more opaque than the prior color. And so acrylics, good quality acrylics, they're pretty much always going to show you in some way how opaque or transparent the colors are. Like this one seems to be pretty opaque, whereas this one is more transparent. And you can see that both from the little swatches that they put on, these are actual paint swatches that they put on the label here, and they also show you here. Like this is a solid square, so that's opaque. This is a solid on the top, which I believe is semi-opaque, I think. But all good brands will tell you the opacity, because this is essentially a professional brand acrylic or an artist grade acrylic. So as I did before, I'm going to put the excess on this paper over here. And these, you know, you can layer over them. They make great collage papers. And then after I've done that, I am rinsing my brush in the water. So I always keep a separate water container for acrylics than I do for watercolor, because you really don't want to have any cross-contamination. Acrylics are permanent in that, you know, they will not be reactivatable with water, whereas watercolors can always be reactivated. All right, so this is Cobalt Turquoise, which here shows is semi-opaque. And this is actually working pretty well for opening these containers. A lot of times when you have this kind of thing where the container is sealed, there will actually be something on the cap or something like that that will allow you to pierce the tube, but this one doesn't have it. I think you may be able to pierce it with that, you may be able to pierce it with this ring here that's on the inside, but I haven't tried, so. All right. And these colors are gorgeous. Most of these are mixes. This first one, the yellow green, is PY74, PY83, and PG7. And then this aqua green light is PW6 and PG7. And then this cobalt turquoise is just one color. It is PB36. And that is gorgeous. Yeah, you can see the opacity is more like this one, which was the same rating. And these are just lovely. I mean, good quality acrylics are not going to be cheap, but with the sale on these, I thought it was a pretty good deal. Trying to make little marks to kind of show you how this is the heavy body, and you can actually get some structure to it. You can also mix these with all kinds of mediums to create different effects. It's not really what this video is about, but there are so many different ways to mess with acrylics and change their texture, change their opacity. You can add some mediums to make certain colors more, I don't think there's a medium to make things more opaque, but you can definitely make them more transparent. All right, so this next color is Mineral Blue, also called Antique Blue, which is PB29, PW6, and PB15-3. So these are a lot like watercolors in their pigment designation. The pigments are not different that are used between watercolors and acrylics. Oops, that came out a little bit. But it's really just the binder and the medium being used that makes these different and permanent as compared to watercolors, which are reactivatable. But the pigments themselves are the same across all mediums. Because basically when you're talking pigment, you're talking like a dried pigment. And then that gets mixed with whatever medium you're using. Okay, so this one is opaque, which definitely seems to be the case here. And I could probably put, you can also put less to get, I mean, here I have a pretty dry brush, so you would get sort of dry brushy strokes, but it would be less, less opaque if you applied less. And you can kind of see that on my little swatch sheet here, where if I'm applying less, because it's really just a little bit, you're getting more of a transparent effect. So many different ways to use acrylics. And I would say as far as medium, different art supplies, oils are really the only paint that I have not explored at any great length. So, okay, so here we have Burnt Sienna, which is PBR7 and PR101. And this is semi-opaque. And oftentimes Burnt Sienna is just one color, but this is two. Usually it's like a PR101 or a PBR7, I think, but this is combined. Again, more dog fur. Yes, don't get dog fur in your acrylic paint. That is probably a good guide to go by. Okay. Go. I'm going to wipe that off. It's a really nice burnt sienna, really good brown. Burnt sienna is a really great mixing color. It's also kind of nice just on its own. This is actually a really pretty version. Burnt siennas kind of vary depending on your brand and the pigment, because you know you have different levels of pigment in different brands. So that's the burnt sienna, just rinsing off my brush. If you don't rinse your brushes off thoroughly, you're gonna end up getting sort of a stiff brush. All right, two more to go here. So this one is Burgundy, and this is PR122, PR170, and PBK7, and it is semi-opaque again. I think the only true transparent color I have is the last one I'm going to show you, which is a magenta. And magenta is kind of one of my favorite, ooh, that one definitely came out, is one of my favorite acrylic colors. Okay, that came out a lot. Okay, let's kind of try and get that back in there. Sometimes if you, this is true for watercolors too, sometimes if you get a lot of color coming out, you can squeeze the sides a little bit and it'll kind of suck it back in there a little bit. Okay, let me, I can already tell this is a really pretty color. I did get a lot on here, but that's okay. Oh yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous. Because I have so much extra, I can probably do a little bit of the sort of impasto technique that I did here. It's not going to show up as well because this is a little bit more opaque than that one is, but I would actually argue that that one might be semi-transparent, the green one. But lovely. And so you can see this is a little more transparent over here. I'm gonna wipe the rest of that off on my extra sheet of paper. next one is Magenta, aka Quinacridone Violet, which is PR122. You know, different colors might use different pigments. This one's Quin Violet, but pretty much any variation on Quin Magenta, Quin Violet, Magenta, I really, really like them. All right, like I said, this method seems to be working pretty well. Oops, this one's a little stringy there. Okay, let's put a little bit more on there. A little bit more than that. All right, and these generally don't have a smell. Part of what brought that to my attention is that that one did have a little bit of a smell, but usually you're not getting much of a chemical smell with acrylics because they're meant to be used indoors. All right, so this one is transparent. So you are going to be able to see through to the paper. I think that's part of the reason why I like Magenta, because you can see through. Really pretty. Again, I'm going to wipe off the excess. You can get a really pretty glaze over other colors with Magenta. Basically, if you don't like a color that you put down, you can put a glaze over it with another color if it's transparent. If you use something that's not transparent, it's pretty much just going to cover it up. All right, so wiping off my brush here, closing up my acrylic water. All right, so this one's still dry because it was, or still wet because it was applied in a pretty heavy coating, and some of these are still a little bit wet, but you can see where it's dried, this is not as shiny as some acrylic brands. And here you can kind of see where I put that extra texture, that's going to dry like that and show that texture even when dried. And you can actually see here where I put a little bit extra, and here I did the same thing. That's going to hold, the stiffer the acrylic, the more that's going to show up in here. It'll also take longer to dry, but acrylics generally dry pretty darn fast. I mean, here, this one's almost completely dry and it's pretty matte, you can see. So different pigments are also going to have different glossiness. Like this one, where this is dry, this is probably just a little bit glossier than this one. This one's not dry yet, but this one, where it's dry here, that's a little glossier even than this one and this one. But anyway, these are really great acrylics. This is a brand that I just kind of tried one day, mainly because of that pink color, that ash rose, I believe, that I wanted to try out, and really, really liked it. Really liked the texture, really liked the finish on it, which is not super, super shiny. And these colors do not disappoint either. These are going to be colors that I can use as is or mix. And they're going to be really fun in my mixed media stuff, art journaling, etc. I have not tried using these on a jelly plate, so I don't know how well they would work with that. I think because they are so stiff, it might be a little bit, they dry so quickly that it might be a little more difficult than other brands. But if you're in a fairly wet environment or a humid environment, you probably could use them for that as well. All right, well, that's all I had for you today. And really quickly, let me just show you my wipe off paper there. So this I can, I could jelly plate print over this, or, put more doodle or whatever to use up that paint. Use your paint. All right. Like I said, this is all I had for you today. Feel free to subscribe to keep track of future videos on my channel. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. I hope to see you next time. But in the meantime, have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye.